Something was wrong before I even reached table 12. The jazz in Harbor and Vine sounded softer, like the room was holding its breath, and my hands felt too cold against the warm plates. I had been on my feet since 4, smiling through birthdays and first dates, calculating tips against daycare and rent. At 29, I could read a dining room the way other people read weather. Tonight the air shifted. At the bar, a man in a navy suit cradled a drink he never sipped. He watched the mirror behind bottles, not the television, not the bartender. Across the dining room, another man chose the small two-top near the hallway to the restrooms. He kept his back straight, shoulders lifted, and he checked his phone the way people check a pulse. Every minute, his gaze slid toward the kitchen corridor, then away, like he was afraid to be caught wanting something. The third sat at a corner table that happened to face the service door we used for deliveries. He ordered sparkling water and left it untouched. All three had the same tight jaw, the same restless fingers, the same timing like they shared one clock. I tried to focus on my section, on the candlelight and the clink of stemware, but my brain kept cataloging tells. In school, I had studied behavioral psychology, all those neat diagrams of threat assessment that never mentioned how it feels when danger sits 10 feet away. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket with a message from Ava's babysitter. Pajamas on, story finished, lights out. Relief and guilt hit together. I should have been driving home, not standing in a room full of strangers and secrets. Still, I kept watching. The barman adjusted his jacket, again and again. When I refilled water near the corner table, I caught a breath of conversation from the man by the restrooms. He spoke into his phone with his head turned, pretending to study the menu, and I heard 2 clear fragments. 11:45 at night, and back exit. My stomach tightened so hard I almost dropped the pitcher. Harbor and Vine had a back exit that only staff used, and I had seen Dominic Devereaux leave through it every Friday for 3 months. He always sat with his view of the room, calm, controlled, untouchable. Suddenly, he looked target-shaped. Dominic was 35, maybe a little older in the way power adds years. He wore tailored charcoal, an expensive watch, and the kind of stillness that made other men shift their chairs to give him space. Most guests came here to be seen. Dominic came like he owned the shadows. I carried his usual Barolo with steady hands that did not match my heartbeat. A coworker, Tessa, brushed past me with a grin that asked if the spender had noticed me. I pretended not to understand, because understanding would make it real. Up close, his eyes swept the room. I could have done what I always did with discomfort. Swallow it, smile, finish my shift. No one would blame a single mom for choosing the safest path. Ava needed me more than any stranger did, and I was already behind on her class trip payment. But my training would not let the pattern go. 3 men, 3 positions, 1 deadline. If I stayed silent and something happened, I would carry it forever. If I warned him and I was wrong, I could lose the job that kept our lights on. My fingers trembled as I set down the wine. I leaned in to straighten his place setting, stealing privacy from linen and candlelight. I did not speak like a heroine. The warning came out as a confession. I had been watching 3 men, their positions, their timing, and I had heard 11:45 at night tied to the back exit. I needed him to stay still, to not rise and walk the route he always walked. I tried to sound calm, like a server noting an allergy, not a mother begging a stranger to live. His hand froze on his glass, and the room held its breath too. He did not flinch, but his posture changed, subtle as a lock turning. His gaze swept the bar, the hallway, and returned to me as if weighing my sanity. I watched his hand slide into his jacket and come back out with his phone, slow enough to look casual. My chest tightened at the calm of it. I realized that while I had been studying him for months, he had been studying danger for years. The candle flickered, and in that light I saw something predatory, not aimed at me, but ready. He tapped once and set the phone down. For a breath, the room tried to pretend nothing had changed. Someone laughed at the chef's joke. Glasses clinked. Then Dominic's phone buzzed, one hard vibration that cut through the jazz. His eyes lifted past me, not startled, just certain. Men in dark suits unfolded from the edges of Harbor and Vine like shadows learning to walk. I had not noticed them before, and that scared me more than the 3 watchers did. The barman tensed. The hallway man turned. Dominic rose, and I knew he would move me for safety. My shift was over before I chose it. Suit jackets moved like curtains across Harbor and Vine, and the jazz kept playing as if the dining room had not just changed into a trap. The 3 men I had clocked all night were suddenly surrounded by strangers in dark suits, wrists pinned, phones lifted, Bodies turned toward the service corridor where guests would only see candlelight and dessert menus. No yelling, no messy struggle, just fast control that made my stomach drop. Dominic did not look at me for reassurance. He moved like reassurance was something he provided, not something he needed. His hand settled at my back and guided me through the crowded aisle with the ease of a man parting water. I caught Tessa by the bar with her face frozen mid-smile, and I hated that I could not explain without making it worse. One wrong step, and I felt it in my bones. This would become my last shift. Outside, the alley air hit my cheeks like winter. A black SUV waited with its engine running. Too clean for the curb, too ready to be chance. My brain whispered the phrase I never let myself think. This is how people disappear. And my legs went numb as I slid into the back seat. The door shut with a soft finality that felt louder than the jazz I had left behind. I tried to breathe like Dr. Kim had taught me in a counseling class. In for 4, hold, out for 6, but the count kept breaking. My mind leapt to Ava, asleep at home, 6 years old and stubborn about her nightlight. If I did not show up in the morning, who would walk her to school? Who would sign the permission slip? Who would stop her father from using my absence as proof that I was unfit? I pictured the custody emails, the court language, the way stability can be taken from a single mom with one missed pickup. Dominic sat beside me, leaving inches of space that still felt like pressure. He checked his phone once, as calm as if this were a scheduled meeting, and I realized he had not been surprised by my warning. He had been waiting for it. The high-rise we entered looked like a magazine cover, glass and chrome shining over Brooklyn. The lobby smelled like polished stone. 2 guards nodded with polite smiles that never reached their eyes. Cameras blinked in corners. The elevator demanded a keycard and a code, then climbed so smoothly my ears popped. By the time the doors opened, I felt both weightless and trapped. The penthouse was beautiful in the way a vault is beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city like a painting, but every door had extra locks, every hallway had sightlines, and the silence felt designed. I noticed the tiny sensors by the frames, and the way the curtains could seal the view in seconds. A woman appeared near the kitchen, mid-30s, hair sleek, eyes sharp as a paper cut. I learned her name from the way Dominic looked at her. Nora Blackwell, the person who turned chaos into paperwork. She moved like I was already in a file. In the minutes since the restaurant, she had called Harbor and Vine, told my manager I had food poisoning, and cleared my schedule for days. My phone buzzed with missed calls I could not answer, and notifications that made it clear someone else had. Nora led me to a guest room. Clothes lay folded on the bed. Not random sizes, but mine, down to the waistband and the flat shoes I preferred for long shifts. A toothbrush waited beside a new hair tie, the same thickness I bought in packs from the drugstore. My skin prickled with the feeling of being studied. Then my panic finally found its real name: Ava. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. She was with Mrs. Patel, my upstairs neighbor, the woman who knew Ava's favorite cereal and never forgot her school pickup. But what if Ava woke up and cried for me? What if my ex showed up early and found me gone? Nora watched me unravel and offered facts like a lifeline. Ava had been checked on, paid for, and kept where she should be. A vetted sitter had been added as backup. Mrs. Patel had been told I was stuck at work late and would come in the morning. Nora showed me a quiet photo of Ava curled on a couch with her stuffed whale, mouth open in sleep. Relief hit me so hard I had to sit. Relief carried a second feeling underneath, colder than fear. If Dominic could reach my building and my child this quickly, he could also rearrange my life without asking. Power like that does not hug. It closes. Later, as Nora adjusted a security panel by the door, she let a detail slip, smooth as silk. Dominic had been aware of me for a while. Not just my name on a reservation, but my shifts, my degree, my daughter, the babysitter I used on Fridays. I heard it and felt my stomach drop, because it meant tonight was not the beginning. It was the moment I noticed the cage. I woke to quiet so expensive it felt like a dare. Sunlight slid across marble, and my borrowed sheets smelled like hotel soap. For a second I forgot where I was. Then I saw the extra lock on the door and the camera wink above it. My throat went dry. Luxury usually means choice, but here it meant choreography. A tray of pastries waited untouched, as if hunger was predictable. I checked my phone and saw Ava still asleep at Mrs. Patel's. Relief came followed by shame that it took strangers to guard my child while I sat in silk. Dominic met me in a room that looked staged for meetings, not living. I understood, from the way he laid out facts like chess pieces, that last night was not random. Victor Moretti had ordered him removed, and my warning changed the outcome. Now I was evidence with a heartbeat. The word target never sounded real in class lectures, but it landed heavy in my stomach. My knees softened. I pictured Ava's backpack on our kitchen chair, the sticker chart for brushing teeth, the forms for after-school care. If I vanished, my ex would call it fate and file paperwork. By late morning, fear turned into restless anger. I told myself I only needed air, a walk, proof I still owned my feet. I rode the elevator down alone, heart thudding, rehearsing an excuse. It stopped between floors. When the doors reopened, a guard waited, smiling like he expected me. He guided me back up without touching, which felt worse. I could feel cameras following, eyes tracking my shoulders. At the penthouse door, he nodded, as if my attempt was a child's tantrum. I walked inside and hated how my body learned the rules. Don't run, don't argue, don't ask. I hid in the guest bathroom and did the only thing that still belonged to me. I breathed against stone, counting like a metronome. In for 4, hold, out for 6. I pictured Ava after bath time, hair damp, eyes heavy. I promised her silently that I would come home. People think waitressing is a pit stop. For me, it was survival after mother's medical bills ate everything. I finished my degree at night, one class at a time, hoping to counsel later. Then Ava arrived, her father left, and the math got sharper. Tips became groceries, smiles became rent. Dominic watched me, weighing my fear against my training. He did not call my warning luck. He treated it like a tool. He seemed to wonder what else I could see, what patterns I might catch before they turned fatal. The idea made my skin prickle, because tools get kept. Night came again, and the penthouse stayed bright in all the wrong ways. The city glowed through glass, distant and indifferent. I lay awake, listening for hallway footsteps, counting the seconds between elevator dings. Each time the building settled, my heart restarted. I wondered if Ava felt my absence tonight. At 3 a.m, I gave up and walked to the kitchen for water. The air smelled of espresso, rich and sharp. Dominic stood at the counter, dressed, shoulders squared to the window. Steam rose from 2 cups. He looked like a man guarding something he could not name. He slid a cup toward me with steadiness. I understood he was explaining why trust scares him. His mother died from poison given by someone welcomed as family, someone who ate at their table. He described it like a fact, yet his fingers gripped the cup until his knuckles blanched. I expected something loud, a monster story. Instead, it was quiet grief that hardened into rules. I saw his vigilance differently. The scanning eyes, the back to the wall, the way he never let anyone stand behind him. It was not paranoia. It was survival, mapped from loss long ago. I shared my mother's last months, bills stacked like threats, and how I learned to smile through panic because Ava watched everything. I admitted exhaustion makes you reckless, and being alone makes every decision feel final. Dominic did not offer promises. He listened, still and attentive, and I felt seen. In the restaurant, I thought I was decoding danger alone. Now I knew he recognized it instantly. Betrayal was not a possibility in his mind. It was a season that returned. He built his life to erase surprises, because surprises killed his mother. My warning confirmed what his instincts knew. Back in bed, sleep came in slices. I kept thinking about men who appeared after one buzz, and how Nora arranged Ava's safety like a checklist. My talent for reading people was not a party trick here. It was currency. I felt Dominic deciding where to place me, removing variables. By dawn, the city looked normal, but I knew normal was a costume. Dominic was built from betrayal, from poison delivered by family hands. That was why he recognized danger instantly. I could feel the phase closing in. Structure, escorts, conditions dressed as safety. In his world, locks were love. 2 weeks later, the penthouse had taught me a new kind of calendar. Mornings started with Ava's video calls, afternoons with Nora's clipped updates, nights with the soft click of locks I didn't control. Dominic never yelled, never threatened. He just removed options until my fear settled into routine. I learned which hallway cameras blinked, which guards pretended not to listen, which elevators required a second keycard. Somewhere inside the quiet, my body stopped bracing every second. That scared me more than the guards. It meant I was adapting. On the 15th day, Dominic offered me my old life, revised. Returning to Harbor and Vine was presented as a favor, but it felt like a contract written on my skin. A driver would take me and bring me home. A guard would sit inside the restaurant, close enough to see me, far enough to pretend he was a guest. I was not to step outside during a shift, not even to breathe in the alley air. If Ava's school called, Nora would answer first. If I wanted groceries, they would appear. I told myself it was temporary, the way you tell a child a shot will be quick and painless. Then Dominic dropped the surreal part with the same calm he used to order wine. He had bought a controlling stake in Harbor and Vine. My paycheck tripled overnight. My schedule shrank to 3 nights a week, and my benefits suddenly existed. It should have felt like rescue. Instead, it felt like ownership dressed in generosity. New faces worked the floor, too polished to be servers, too quiet to be new hires. They carried trays and watched doorways. The manager's tone softened around my name, like he'd been briefed. Even the reservation list had new blocked tables for me alone. Walking back in felt like stepping into a photo of myself. The marble floors still gleamed, candles still flickered, and the hostess still smiled like nothing in my world had cracked. But I moved differently, shoulders tight, eyes scanning exits before menus. Tessa hugged me with the same warmth, then paused, noticing the manicure, the smoother hair, the way I looked rested in a way poverty never allows. I lied inside my head, rehearsing a story about a weekend with family, about catching up on sleep. Each word tasted like betrayal. I was here, but I was also being watched. Miles Kane became part of my section without ever ordering me directly. He sat alone at the corner table with sightlines to the front door, the kitchen swing gate, and the hallway to the back exit. He ate slowly, methodically, as if the courses were a cover for time. To everyone else, he was just a customer who liked solitude. To me, he was a leash with a pleasant face. When I passed, I felt his attention like a fingertip on my spine. He never stared. He monitored, the way Dominic did. That night I counted his blinks like prayers. On the 3rd night back, a man in a cheap badge and expensive shoes drifted through the dining room before service. He said he was from the city, checking compliance. But his eyes clung to the floor plan more than the sanitizer stations. He asked about shift changes, who locked the back door, which staff used the alley. Carmen at the host stand handled him with patience, and he left without a single note. Hours later, when Dominic appeared in my section, I folded the memory into my wine service and let it spill out as warning. His calm tightened. Just after 9 at night, the dining room was packed, and I was balancing plates like my life depended on it, because in a way it did. Dominic's presence cut through the noise. I felt it before I saw him, the way conversations subtly shifted when he entered. Miles stood up without looking at me, already moving. Dominic's hand found my elbow, guiding me toward the service corridor. And my mind protested in frantic flashes about checks to close, customers waiting, rent to earn. None of that mattered to him. His urgency was a verdict. I followed. Fear outran pride. The back door opened to a parking lot made of shadows, with one buzzing lamp above a dumpster and the dull glow of taillights. My shoes scraped gravel as Dominic steered me behind a delivery van, his body turning into a shield. A crack split the air and a window burst somewhere near us. I flinched hard. More cracks followed, quick and sharp, and I tasted metal in my mouth. Dominic pressed my head down, firm but careful. Miles and 2 other men moved with precision, returning fire I could not see. The world narrowed to breath and concrete alone. Silence hit so fast my ears rang. A car alarm wailed, then died. Dominic's hands swept my shoulders and arms, checking for injuries, and my knees finally remembered how to shake. Men arrived, doors opening, headlights cutting the asphalt into white strips. In minutes, the lot looked normal again, like terror had never lived there. I waited for the thought that they meant to kill me, but it wouldn't hold. The shots had been wide, hurting us, forcing us toward cover. That was when the truth settled heavy. They weren't trying to kill me. They were trying to take me. By the time the last echo died in the parking lot, my hands were still shaking like I'd run barefoot through winter. Dominic's palm stayed at the back of my neck, steady and warm, while Miles and the others moved around us with clipped efficiency, checking angles, checking cars, checking for a second wave I couldn't see. I kept touching my own ribs, my arms, my hair, as if a bruise might suddenly appear and explain the terror. My phone was the only thing that mattered, and when I saw a quick update that Ava was asleep upstairs with Mrs. Patel, my knees finally remembered how to hold me. That was the sickest part. The trembling didn't slow until I was close enough to feel his breathing match mine, close enough to borrow his calm. I hated that my body learned him as shelter. Safety shouldn't feel like surrender, and yet I caught myself leaning into the quiet gravity he carried, the way he positioned himself between me and everything else without asking permission. In the weeks since Harbor and Vine, he had become a routine I never requested. A cup of coffee left where I'd find it, a driver who knew Ava's school route, a silence that made room for my thoughts when I couldn't stop spinning. After the ambush, he brought me to the penthouse and, instead of locking me in the guest room, he left the office door open. It was a small thing, almost nothing, but I understood it as an offering. He let me see the screens, the maps, the names he refused to say out loud. He asked for my read on the men from the restaurant and the lot, not like a test, but like my judgment mattered. In his world, trust looked less like a promise and more like access, and the fact that he gave me any at all made my chest ache with a strange mix of pride and dread. Then Nora showed up with a manila folder held flat against her torso, as if paper could carry weight. Her face was neutral, but her movements were careful in the way people get when they're about to deliver bad news. She set it on the counter beside the untouched pastries and waited for me to open it, like this was simply another task on a list. The first page was a photo from a street camera, a young man's profile, baseball cap, delivery bag, strap across his shoulder. My throat tightened before I even placed him. It was Evan Moretti, 24, the kid who used to drop off seafood orders at Harbor and Vine and linger an extra second to ask if Ava liked the little bread rolls we brought home sometimes. The kid who once carried a stroller down my building steps when I was late and panicking and trying to be strong in public. Nora's next page explained, in her neat, emotionless way, that Evan had been selling information about me. My address, my shifts, Ava's school, and because of that, Dominic had ordered him eliminated 2 days earlier. I felt heat rise from my chest into my face, like my body was trying to burn the words off the page. Evan wasn't a headline to me. He was a person with chipped nail polish from loading boxes, a laugh that came too loud for the hallway, a life that looked ordinary enough to forget how fragile it was. I went to Dominic with the folder clutched in my hands and tried to make him see what I saw. I tried to explain student loans, the way young men chase quick money when the bills feel bigger than the future, the way one bad choice shouldn't become a death sentence. I tried to offer other paths, pay him, move him, scare him straight, anything that wasn't final. Dominic listened the way he always listened, still and exact, and I understood his answer before he finished. In his mind, Evan had crossed a line that erased youth and intention. Information was a weapon, and weapons got removed. He believed ignorance didn't soften consequences, and mercy invited repeat attacks. He kept circling back to one blunt truth. Threats didn't get second chances in his world because second chances got people buried. I watched his face as he held that logic, and I realized the tenderness I'd been collecting in small moments wasn't a separate man. The man who left coffee for me was the same man who could order a death and sleep afterward. I backed away, not fast, but like someone stepping off a ledge in the dark. I thought of Ava's hands in mine, sticky from finger paint, and I knew I couldn't teach her that love meant locks and lists of enemies. I packed before I could change my mind, grabbing sneakers, Ava's blue hoodie, our documents, the photo of my mom. Nora watched without stopping me. When the elevator doors closed, my stomach dropped. I was leaving protection and running straight into weather, alone tonight, somehow. Leaving Dominic's building felt like stepping out of a hurricane shelter into open streetlight. I carried Ava on one hip and our backpack on the other shoulder, moving fast enough that my lungs burned. Ava's hair smelled like the strawberry shampoo Mrs. Patel used, and she kept asking with her eyes why my face looked so tight. I told myself I was doing the brave thing, the clean thing, the mother thing. I was taking her away from a man who could order death with a calm voice. Still, my fingers kept checking the hallway behind me as if Dominic's silence could follow. I didn't go home. Home had cameras I couldn't see anymore. I took the first ride west, a cramped overnight bus where the seats smelled like old fabric and fried food, and I held Ava close while she slept. Outside the window, New York flattened into dark highway, then into nothing. I tried to do the math of safety like I always did. Distance plus family equals protection. I texted my sister Rachel from a new number, the kind you buy at a corner store when you don't want to be found, and I asked if we could stay a few days. Cleveland greeted us with gray sky and the kind of cold that makes your teeth ache. Rachel's apartment sat above a laundromat, small and warm, with mismatched mugs and a couch that had seen better years. Rachel opened the door in sweatpants and concern, her arms already moving like a shield around us. I watched her take Ava's tiny suitcase, watched her pretend not to stare at the shadows under my eyes. I felt my throat tighten with gratitude and shame. For one evening, life almost behaved. Ava curled up on Rachel's couch in dinosaur pajamas and fell into cartoons, the kind with bright music and problems that get solved in 10 minutes. Rachel made cheap coffee that tasted like burnt comfort, and she set out toast with too much butter like we were back in our childhood kitchen. I let myself sink into the normal sounds, a neighbor's TV through the wall, the washer downstairs thumping, Ava giggling at a silly character. Rachel moved around us with quiet care, and I nearly believed I could disappear into her routine. But my body wouldn't stop scanning. Every time headlights swept the blinds, my shoulders jumped. My phone kept buzzing with blocked numbers, and I kept turning it face down like that could erase the past. When I stepped onto the tiny balcony to breathe, I noticed a dark sedan idling across the street for too long, then pulling away slowly. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was paranoid. Dominic's world had taught me to see predators in every reflection. The next morning, I was pouring cereal when Rachel's phone rang. She rolled her eyes first, annoyed at another spam call. Then she answered, and her whole face changed. Annoyance drained into confusion, then into a terror so sharp it made my stomach drop. Her hand went slack, and the phone slipped, clattering on the linoleum. I didn't need words to understand. Someone had found us. I moved Ava behind me on instinct, pushing her toward the hallway like my body could become a wall. The knock came once, heavy, and then the door burst inward with a crack of wood and metal. Footsteps flooded the room, fast and practiced. Men in dark gear moved like they'd rehearsed this apartment, like they knew where the couch sat and how far the kitchen was from the exit. One of them raised a gloved hand toward Rachel, and another swung toward me, eyes flat and certain. The air filled with the harsh smell of something chemical as a cloth flashed near Rachel's face. She fought for a second, then her knees buckled as if her strings were cut. My scream turned into a soundless gasp because Ava was watching. They lifted Rachel and carried her out as if she weighed nothing. One of them paused long enough to press a phone against my trembling hand, forcing me to listen. I understood the message in fragments, the way you understand a nightmare. The deadline was 48 hours. I was to return to Brooklyn and deliver proof that Rachel was alive. I was to tell Dominic Devereaux that if he wanted his war to stop touching civilians, he would bring what they demanded. If I failed, Rachel would vanish. Then they were gone, and the apartment felt too quiet, like sound itself had been taken with her. Ava clung to my leg, shaking, asking questions with sobbing breaths I couldn't answer. I pulled her into my arms and rocked her, whispering promises I didn't believe. Guilt poured through me in waves. I had run from Dominic's violence, and I had delivered my sister into it. Rachel's landline sat on the counter, dusty, kept for emergencies. My hands shook as I pressed the buttons. I called Dominic because no one else could reach into this darkness. He answered on the first ring. I breathed and told him Rachel was taken, and Ava was with me, shaking. Running didn't save me. It targeted my family. In the silence after, I felt engines turning toward us. I knew he was already coming, and I had to remember everything now. Dominic reached Cleveland before my panic cooled. The street outside Rachel's building filled with black SUVs that looked too polished for our cracked curb. Men stepped out in quiet lines, touching earpieces, scanning windows, moving like a practice team that had done this in nicer neighborhoods and worse ones. Nora Blackwell emerged last, hair perfect, tablet in hand, already turning my sister's address into a map. Behind her walked Gabe Rios, broader, calmer, the kind of security lead whose steadiness makes everyone else breathe slower. Ava slept curled on the couch in Rachel's borrowed hoodie, thumb in her mouth. I kept smoothing her hair, trying to anchor myself in something soft while the apartment smelled of splintered wood and fear. Dominic came in without drama, eyes moving over the busted door, the overturned chair, the empty space where Rachel had stood. I couldn't look at him for long. I had left him to protect my child, and now I was begging him to save my sister. When he asked for details, I forced my brain into the same mode I used in school, the clean language that keeps you from drowning. I described the men's movement patterns, how they entered fast and split roles without speaking, how one blocked my line to Ava, while another went straight for Rachel. I noted the accent on the voice I heard through the phone, Spanish-flavored but not local, and the chemical smell that hit before Rachel's knees gave out. I told them the cloth came from a sealed pouch, that their gloves were black nitrile, that their boots were light and quiet, that they moved like they had rehearsed this room. Gabe nodded once at each detail, filing it away. Nora handled the life side of the problem. She arranged a temporary neighbor story for Ava's school, secured Rachel's landlord, and had someone replace the door before sunrise so the hallway wouldn't gossip. It was kind, but it was also proof that Dominic's world could rewrite mine in minutes. Dominic stayed with the threat. He made calls I didn't hear, and men outside spoke into radios with voices kept low like prayers. An hour later, a location appeared on a screen. An abandoned warehouse on the industrial edge of the city, the kind of place with broken windows and no curious neighbors. They found it through camera sweeps, plate reads, and underworld contacts who owed Dominic favors. They just turned scattered clues into a pin on a map, and my sister became a coordinate. My mouth went dry as I stared at that point, realizing Rachel was somewhere cold, waiting for a clock to run out. Dominic turned his attention to me again, and I understood he wanted my mind, not my permission. He needed me to interpret what these men would do next, how they would react under pressure. The irony almost made me laugh. I had studied behavior to help people heal, and now my knowledge was being used to pull a hostage out of a criminal cage. Still, I answered because Rachel was my family, and Ava was watching me, even asleep. Cartel crews, I explained, don't hold loyalty the way Dominic's people do. Their obedience is stacked on fear. Fear of bosses, fear of rivals, fear of punishment, fear of being left behind. That fear makes them quick to panic and quick to overreact. If they believe they're being hit from one direction, they tighten and fight. If they believe multiple groups are closing in at once, their discipline fractures. Confusion creates openings, but only if the plan stays precise enough that no one feels cornered into doing something irreversible. Dominic listened, then offered the one truth I had tried not to touch since Evan. He told me, through facts Nora had confirmed, that Evan Moretti hadn't only sold my shifts. Evan had sold Rachel's routines too. The times she walked to the laundromat, the nights she stayed late at the clinic, the fact that Ava was with her aunt now. He had provided a path to my child. The words hit my ribs like a shove. I felt my old outrage crack into a different shape, one that still hurt but finally made sense. I didn't celebrate what Dominic had ordered. I still saw Evan's kind smile, and the way Ava waved at delivery drivers. But I understood, with sick clarity, that hesitation could cost everyone I loved. In Dominic's world, mercy without control was a gamble paid for in bodies. I wiped my face, steadied my voice, and told them I would help get Rachel back. Dominic's eyes held something like approval and something like relief. Before dawn, the plan locked into place. They would use the rescue to draw Victor Moretti's allies into the open, to end this threat instead of chasing it forever. And it would start at midnight, back where my nightmare began. I would walk into Harbor and Vine again, not as a waitress hoping to survive the shift, but as the person who could read the room before it killed us. At midnight, I tied my apron the same way I always had, like muscle memory could protect me. The uniform smelled of starch and old wine, and my hands steadied around the familiar knot while my mind stayed on Ava, asleep in a borrowed bed miles away. Outside, Dominic's SUVs waited in shadows, their engines muted, their lights off. In my ear, low radio chatter became a pulse I tried not to follow too closely. The plan depended on me looking ordinary, moving like a waitress, breathing like this was just another shift and trusting my fear to stay silent. We were not charging the front door with noise. We were building confusion, the kind that splinters a fear-driven crew into smaller mistakes. Dominic's men created separate flashes of threat around the block, not enough to start a war, just enough to make guards look the wrong way and second-guess their orders. The goal was to keep them thinking they faced rival groups, police, and betrayal all at once. When fear rules loyalty, nobody wants to be last standing. I repeated that to myself as I stepped through the staff entrance into Harbor and Vine's quiet, haunted belly. Inside, the dining room felt like a stage after the audience leaves. Tables stood empty under dim sconces, white cloths pale as paper. The only music was the hum of refrigerators behind the bar and the soft click of a swinging kitchen door. My shoes made the tiniest echoes on marble, and every echo sounded like it could betray me. I moved past the service station, touching the counter edge because it was real, because I needed something solid. The smell of lemon cleaner mixed with stale truffle oil, and it made my stomach turn as if danger had scent. I saw 3 men pretending to wait for late dessert. One sat at the bar with rigid shoulders and a drink he never touched, eyes sliding to the entrance in a steady sweep. Another claimed a booth near the restrooms, phone face down, fingers too still, jaw working like he was chewing nerves. The third took a table with a view of the back hallway, checking his watch with compulsive rhythm. Their bodies said vigilance even when their faces tried for boredom. I counted them, then counted the gaps between them, mapping the net they thought I could not see. Through the kitchen service window, I finally found Rachel. She was slumped in a corner booth, wrists bound with plastic ties, head lifted enough to track movement. Her eyes were glassy, not asleep, just slowed, like her body was wading through syrup. Relief hit me so hard it almost knocked me backward. Then urgency slammed in right after. If I stared too long, they would notice. I forced my gaze away, grabbed a linen basket as cover, and let my hands move like work while my mind screamed her name in silence. Ava needs me alive, I told myself again. I slipped into the storage room and pulled kitchen shears from the drawer I knew by touch. The service corridor behind the kitchen smelled of onions and bleach. When I reached Rachel, I knelt like I was fixing a table leg and sliced the ties with quick, careful motions. Her hands trembled. She tried to stand and swayed, and I hooked her arm over my shoulder before she could fall. We moved into the maintenance tunnel, cramped and cold, pipes overhead. She stumbled twice, and I kept pushing, breathing steady until the alley light appeared where Gabe waited with SUV. Gabe guided Rachel into the back seat and wrapped her in a blanket, his voice low and calm in my ear. I watched her eyelids flutter as if she was fighting through fog to stay with me. The moment the door shut, I felt the first breath of the night. I sent the update through the comms the way Dominic taught me, short and factual, that Rachel was secure. Relief rose, then cracked when a new surge of noise came from the restaurant side of the block. I understood Dominic was still inside, and the enemy was not finished retreating. My instinct begged me to climb into the SUV and vanish with Rachel, to scoop up Ava and drive until my hands stopped shaking. But I stared at Harbor and Vine's doors and knew the truth. The kitchen was the pivot point, the place men retreat when pressure closes in. If they tried to take me once, they would try again, and they would hide behind stainless steel and swinging doors. Dominic's team could shoot, but they did not know this maze like I did. I pictured Ava waking and searching for me. I chose to be useful. I ran. The service entrance felt heavier than any shift. I slipped back inside, breath ragged, and the restaurant swallowed me in cold air. Somewhere ahead, bangs and footsteps rolled through walls. I kept to shadows, fingers grazing tile so I would not lose direction. My brain mapped corners, the prep station, the storage door that sticks, the emergency exit behind stacked chairs. I told myself I only needed to guide Dominic out. Near the bar, one of his suited men hesitated. His eyes darted. His fingertips tapped his thigh. Once, twice, again. That tell hit me like ice. Betrayal was here. Crossing back through the service entrance, I felt the air change before I heard anything. Harbor and Vine no longer smelled like butter and wine. It smelled like smoke, spilled liquor, and hot metal. Somewhere in the dining room, glass shattered, and the low jazz playlist kept playing like a bad joke. My shoes slid on a wet patch near the bar. I swallowed hard, telling myself to move like staff, not pray, and keep my hands steady because Ava needed her mother alive tonight. The dining room was a strobe of shadows, emergency lights blinking from the hallway, and every sound blurred into one long roar. I forced my brain into a checklist. Exits, cover, blind spots, routes only servers knew. I cut behind the hostess stand, skirted the wine cabinet, and slipped into the corridor that led to the kitchen prep. Each step was a decision. Panic wanted speed, training wanted angles and breath. I counted footsteps, tracked where bullets to come from, and kept my shoulders low. Near the bar, a man in Dominic's suit line stood half hidden by a toppled stool. His name was Silas, and until this moment I had filed him under loyal, competent, invisible. Now he looked wrong. His eyes flicked too fast, not scanning for threats, but searching for permission inside himself. He kept swallowing, Adam's apple jumping. His jaw tightened, then relaxed, then tightened again. His hands hovered near his jacket like they hated him. A tremor through his fingers, and his pulse beat a warning. Combat fear has a shape I recognize. Wide focus, quick decisions, bodies preparing to run or fight. Silas had a different shape. He was self-soothing, tapping 2 fingers against his thigh in a steady rhythm, then stopping as if he remembered he was being watched. His breathing was shallow, shoulders barely rising. His movements were hesitant, guilt-heavy. He wasn't afraid of Victor's men. He was afraid of what he was about to do. The delay before each motion screamed intention, the way remorse sticks skin. I needed Dominic to see it, and I had seconds. I pressed my palm to the wall, leaned into the corridor so my body was hidden, and pushed my voice through the comm channel the way I'd been taught. I didn't quote anything. I poured urgency into a short burst of meaning. Silas, bar, left side, back angle, deception markers. At the same time I waved once, low, toward Dominic's silhouette across the room. My heart hammered loud. I feared it would give me away. Silas moved, not with the smooth certainty of a man drawing in defense, but with a pause that felt like a confession. His hand slipped inside his jacket, fingers closing around metal. I saw the tremble return, saw his eyes dart to Dominic's back. Then the weapon cleared fabric. A crack split the air. The shot went wide, and something behind the bar exploded into sparkling fragments that rained onto bottles and wood. My ears rang, and the smell of powder mixed with spilled bourbon. Dominic reacted the way a body reacts when it has survived too long to hesitate. He spun before Silas could fire again, movement tight and exact. I saw Dominic's arm extend, saw Silas jolt backward and collapse behind the bar, vanishing from sight as if the floor swallowed him. There was no celebration in Dominic's posture, only grim completion. Watching it, I felt grief and nausea braid together. Trust died in less than a breath. In that instant, I understood why his eyes never softened. The enemy stopped pretending. Men who had blended into booths and corners surged from cover, and the dining room became a funnel of running feet and slammed doors. I hugged the wall near the service corridor, letting Dominic's team push forward, hearing muffled shots and sharp commands blurred into noise. Plates crashed. A chair scraped and toppled. Smoke drifted from somewhere near the entry, turning the candlelight hazy. I watched their movement and knew exactly where they were headed. The kitchen had exits and knives. I wanted to scream at Dominic that this was what he feared most. Not the cartel, not Victor, but the rot inside his own circle. Silas had been family. He had eaten at Dominic's table, stood close enough to guard his back, and still chose betrayal. My stomach clenched at the thought of Ava's trust, her small hand in mine. If trust could be weaponized, then love could be too. I swallowed the panic and moved toward the kitchen doorway because this had to end. The swing door shuddered with impacts from the other side, and the kitchen lights flickered as if the building itself was holding its breath. I gripped the cold metal handle, feeling grease and sanitizer under my fingertips, and listened. Footsteps clustered, then scattered. Someone knocked a pan to the floor with a metallic scream. Dominic's presence pulled the air tight, like a storm at the center of the room. I stepped through, knowing the next minutes would decide everything and the enemy was waiting there. I pushed through the swinging door and the kitchen hit me like daylight. Stainless steel flashed under harsh fluorescence, and the floor smelled of sanitizer and heat. Pans rattled where someone had brushed past. My breath sounded too loud, as if the room could hear fear in my chest tonight. I stayed close to the prep counter, using it as a spine. I knew which tiles slicked first, where the freezer door blocked sightlines, where the dish pit formed a shadow. Years of carrying plates taught me routes that bullets could not predict, and I followed them without looking back. Dominic stood near the stove line, shoulders squared, gaze fixed ahead. Victor Moretti paced opposite him, too confident for the chaos, chin lifted like a dare. Even from behind stacked sheet pans, I saw Victor's swagger thinning, his eyes checking exits, his mouth tightening between breaths as pressure closed in. When Dominic's head turned slightly, he caught my position with a quick peripheral glance. The shift in him was subtle but real, a tightening of focus that included me. His feet adjusted to put his body between Victor and the corridor where I hid, protective without touching for seconds, too. Victor lunged first, impatient, driven by pride more than plan. Dominic answered with the cold economy of someone who has survived betrayal. They closed the space between them in 2 steps, hands moving fast, bodies colliding against the metal edge of a counter. Breath harsh and raw, then silence fell. I watched faces, not weapons. Victor's eyes widened, searching for an audience, for a deal, for a way to stay the hero of his own story. His lips peeled back in frustration, and his shoulders rose higher, the posture of a man realizing the room no longer belongs to him. Dominic did not posture. He moved with a finality that felt like a door closing. Victor stumbled, caught himself on the range hood, and the fight ended as quickly as it began. The next sound was a single pan clattering to the floor, and then only breathing remained around us. My knees threatened to fold, not from injury, from the sudden release. I pressed my palm to the cool fridge door to stay upright. Relief came first, then grief for every line crossed to get here. I thought of Ava's small face and forced myself steady before I dared breathe. Sirens began to swell outside, distant at first, then nearer, echoing between buildings. Dominic's men appeared like tidewater, not frantic, just efficient. Someone shut a door, someone killed the lights toward the dining room, someone slid a black case across the tiles as if this were routine not for me. Dominic came to me with bloodless calm, scanning my face, my hands, the way my shoulders shook. He did not ask permission. He simply anchored me by placing his jacket around my back, a barrier against cold air and staring eyes. In that gesture, I felt acceptance and warning together. I realized I could not go back to being moved like cargo, hidden when convenient, locked away when danger rose. If I stayed near Dominic, it would be with my own voice. Ava would never be leverage, never a reason to silence me. Protection without dignity was a cage again. He did something I did not expect. He signaled Gabe to bring my phone, not confiscate it. He waited while I texted the sitter to check Ava, and he let me read the reply. Then he placed his hand, palm up, and stepped back as if offering choice, not command. For a moment we stood in the harsh kitchen light, surrounded by steam and stainless steel, and I felt how this room held our story. I had once carried plates through these doors for strangers. Tonight I carried my family through them. The same threshold, different woman, different cost now. Nora guided us toward the back corridor as sirens grew urgent, and I watched her team erase panic with procedure. Doors closed, lights dimmed. The building seemed to exhale. Outside, cold air slapped my cheeks, and the night felt enormous. Dominic kept pace beside me, not dragging, just staying close. In the SUV, I stared at my apron, clean but heavy with meaning. I thought about school forms, daycare pickups, and how life can look ordinary while it is guarded by invisible rules. Dominic's world would rebuild fast, stacking restaurants and paperwork over ruin like linen over a cracked table. I leaned my head back and let my eyes close, exhaustion settling into my bones. Somewhere in Cleveland, Rachel was breathing. Somewhere, Ava was safe. I did not know what tomorrow would demand. Only that Mia ended in that kitchen. 2 years later, I would not recognize her at all. The next morning would bring paperwork, rehearsed stories, and rules that sounded like care. Dominic would offer structure, drivers, cameras, safe schools, streets. I would argue, negotiate, and learn to use my own skills as leverage. In the months ahead, I would stop flinching at power and start shaping it. 2 years later, I start my Mondays behind glass walls instead of behind a mahogany bar. Harbor and Vine is still part of the Devereaux group, but my badge now says Behavioral Risk Consulting, and my desk faces the Brooklyn Bridge like a dare. At 9 a.m., the city looks clean, almost innocent, and I remind myself that appearances are a language. I sip coffee that has gone cold, scan a schedule of interviews, and feel the old waitress reflex in my hands, steady and fast. Back then I ran from danger. Now I walk toward it, holding my boundaries. The first candidate sits across from me in a tailored suit, smiling too early, too wide. I watch the tiny things people forget they are doing. His pupils tightening when I mention loyalty, the quick lick of a dry lip, the way his knee bounces under the table and then freezes when he realizes I noticed. I do not accuse. I ask gentle questions and let silence do the heavy lifting. In my notes I write patterns, not judgments. Safe for the dining room. Risk for the back office. Too hungry for approval. Dominic reads my report and simply nods. At 3 p.m., my calendar blocks out one sacred task: school pickup. Ava is 8 now, all elbows and opinion, and she runs into my arms with the kind of trust that hurts. Her backpack smells like crayons and apples, and she tells me about a science project while I check the street without making it obvious. I never want her to feel hunted. At home, she does homework at the kitchen island while I stir pasta sauce and listen for the soft click of the front gate. Warm inside, vigilant outside, always. Rachel laughs, reminding me to breathe today. The Empire looks like restaurants to the public. 12 dining rooms, glossy menus, grand openings, charity galas. I see the second meaning everywhere. A private booth at Pierlight doubles as a secure meeting room, its art framed to hide a camera. My pearl hairpin holds my bun and a tiny GPS chip I chose myself, because choice matters. Even our house upstate is 2 stories of warmth and bedtime stories, wrapped in stone walls, motion lights, and polite guards who know Ava's favorite cereal. Beauty and security braided so tightly most people never notice the seam. I notice every day. After Harbor and Vine, I made my terms plain in my own head, long before I said them out loud. I would not be hidden, bought, or carried. I would be partnered with, and Ava would never be a bargaining chip. Dominic did not argue with speeches. He answered with decisions. My name went on company documents beside his. My consulting unit has its own budget. When meetings run late, he makes sure a driver takes me home, then stays back so I can walk through my door first. Respect, practiced. It is quiet proof that power can listen too. Rachel's recovery was not a straight line. For months, she jumped at knocking sounds and kept her curtains half closed. I paid for therapy with legitimate invoices, and she accepted help without pretending she was fine. She moved into a brighter apartment near Lake Erie and took a job at a community clinic, where she helps women rebuild after trauma. She still hates the way Dominic's world shadows mine, and I respect that. We do Sunday dinners anyway, spaghetti and board games. Ava stealing extra garlic bread while Rachel pretends not to notice. Family is hard. We keep showing up. I still think about Evan sometimes, not as a file, but as a young man with tired eyes and a kindness that felt real. I do not celebrate what happened to him. I carry it as a warning about desperation and about choices that ripple into children's lives. 2 years ago, outrage burned so hot it made me run. Then surprise came, and the truth widened my view. He had sold details that could have reached Ava. I learned that love does not erase consequences, and mercy needs timing to survive. Now I protect without pretending the world is fair. Tonight, after Ava falls asleep, I step onto the balcony and watch city lights blink like a quiet heartbeat. Dominic is inside reviewing reports that look like spreadsheets to outsiders and like weather maps to us. I do not need to know every dark detail to know the cost of ignoring them. He brings me a mug of tea, leaves it within reach, and lets me choose whether to talk. That is how our partnership works now. Offered, not forced. Below, one of our restaurants closes for the night, doors locking softly. I breathe, feeling safe, and still alert always. If I had to name the change, it would be this. Courage stopped being a moment and became practice. Curiosity led me to notice danger. Empathy pushed me to care. Outrage taught me boundaries. Surprise forced me to learn truths. Satisfaction arrived when Rachel came home and Ava kept smiling. Reflection keeps me human when power tempts me to go numb. I am not proud of all the shadows in my life, but I am proud that I choose responsibility over fear. If you were me, would you run or warn? If this story moved you, like, share, and comment.